We should be live, everybody, just FYI. Bear with me just a second, guys. I got some folks in the waiting room that I can't identify, and I'm not going to let them in until I can get them to acknowledge. If everybody would go around the horn and unmute and just say hello or something, just so we can make sure that everybody's good.
Hello, this is Stephen.
Got it, Stephen.
This is Steven Skrabarczyk and Will Walls.
Hi, guys.
This is Clark Smith, still here.
Good.
Nick, we can't hear you. You have to unmute.
I can take Nick, speak.
There you go. Now you can.
Garrett's having a hard time. I've got him on the phone. Garrett, well, I'm not going to give your phone number out over the internet.
Does he have the instructions that you guys all had?
Hang on a minute. Yeah, call Nicole. Sorry, Nicole.
That's okay.
We've already checked mine, but it's working fine.
Yeah, you're good, Robert. Everybody's good so far. Okay, I've got Frank. I've got Vanessa.
Hey, Rick. So Garrett says that he's clicked on the link and it says that the host will let you in soon.
How's he identified? I'm just trying to get. I've said
Probably under. I think last time he was under Sam's name.
Okay, that's him. Okay.
Okay, he just didn't know who you were. He should be letting you in now. Okay. Okay.
Nicole, we have everybody. Jay's not going to make it. Do a quick head count.
It looks like we have everybody there but Jay.
And yeah, and Jay's not going to make it. I confirmed.
Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just for the public, for those that are watching this, if I don't, only those that are admitted now are admitted to the waiting room. So if you're calling to leave a comment, please look at the instructions. There's a dial-in number with meeting ID and a password. So please, if you want to make a comment, use the call-in number. You're not going to be admitted to the Zoom meeting. So we'll give you a couple of minutes. Well, I think the instructions are pretty clear. So again, you won't be admitted to the Zoom meeting. So if you're waiting, like I said, you're going to keep waiting. So please, to make a comment, go to the dial-in information. It was sent out. If you want to write it down, I'll repeat it one time and then we got to get going. So it was on the agenda that was posted. Dial-in number is 1-346-248-7799. The meeting ID is 814-2993-3625. And the password 252318. For those that are on, was that clear? Did everybody get that? Somebody just let me know.
Yeah, it sounded good.
Okay. I want to give everybody an opportunity from the public to participate. I know it's difficult, it's awkward. We anticipate this to be our last Zoom meeting, but like I said, we tried to put the protocols out well in advance.
Rick, can you hear me? This is Nick.
Yep, I can hear you. Like I said, everybody, please just unmute yourself. And when you're not talking, as best you can, just go ahead and mute. I don't hear any feedback, so everything looks really good right now, but a lot of you are muted. So like I said, just kind of keep it that way until you need to talk. And if I hear feedback, I'll tell you. My engineers that are on from Urban, do any of you guys recognize, I've asked a couple times, I've not gotten a response. Do you recognize a number 855-1549, a 361 number?
That's probably Thomas Tiffin.
Does anybody?
I see it immediately, but give me a second.
I do not recognize that number. This is Stephen Grunwald.
Okay, Stephen. I'm going to plug it into my contacts real quick and see if anything pops up on mine. And then Nick, then we'll be ready to go, buddy. Sorry.
Can I ask a question? This is Nick.
Sure.
I've got Vanessa, Frank, Clark, Stephen, and Stephen, both Urban, and I've got Garrett. Is there a way I can, that's all I can see. Am I supposed to be able to see everybody?
Do you just have 10
Not
boxes?
seeing Nick.
No, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boxes, and I don't see myself or.
If you see the agenda on your back screen. And then the boxes that you've got all the windows in people. See at the top, there's a single, a square, a double, and then a multi.
Robert, I don't know what you did, but your audio is coming across. So you have YouTube playing too?
Yeah, I'm watching YouTube. No.
No, I mean, are you on the
No,
YouTube live? Something happened to your audio.
Your audio sounds like Darth Vader a little bit right now.
Awesome. Let me mute you, unmute.
Nick, but Nick, we can see you, and Stephen Grunwald is on, but he's not showing video.
Okay, but I can't
Yeah,
see, well, maybe I see everybody. I'll be quiet, I guess.
Is the audio better?
No,
And who is that? Who's Darth Vader?
that's Robert.
Okay. I don't see Robert either.
Yeah.
Nick, there's a button up. I think it's in the upper left, and it gives you. Oh, now I see Stephen. There's a grid view. If you hover over it, it'll kind of.
Where is that supposed to be, Rick?
In the screen where you see anybody, it's in the upper left corner. If it's like my configuration.
Somehow I can see myself now, but I still don't. Who else? I see Stephen, the other Urban family, Nicole, Robert, Rick, and Nick.
So Nick, right above where the pictures are,
Yes.
on the left-hand side are there little icons like a flat line, a little box, two boxes, and then 9 boxes. Click on the 9 boxes.
On the 9 boxes?
Yeah.
Okay, I have the same people, but it rearranged them in 2 rows, but nobody else.
Expand it down. You can grab the bottom corner of it and drag it down, make it bigger.
What bottom corner? You know who you're dealing with here.
There should be
Right.
there should be a box that the pictures are in. In the bottom left
corner.
or right, there's little lines. If you grab those lines and drag with your mouse, it should make it bigger. You should see 3 rows.
Is my audio better?
Yes.
Yes. Whatever
Okay.
you did, yes. You gargle?
I'm sorry, guys.
Drag the whole box to the top, Nick, like
What
grab the
box,
top
sir?
header. So
What
the
box?
box with all the videos in it, grab the top bar, drag it up to the top, then go down to the bottom right or left corner. You'll see little bars expand.
I'm sorry, guys.
It's
I'm
okay.
not.
Wow,
So
I don't have any of that either.
right next to the where you just clicked on the 9 little boxes.
Yes, I got that. Now go to the left.
Go down. Who do you see on the bottom? Who's on the bottom row?
Nicole on the left and Vanessa on the right.
So I only see myself. I don't see anybody but me.
Go to the top of your little window header. Are you the full page, Vanessa?
I have 3 choices. There's small, medium, and large, but I don't have an option for 9 boxes. I don't know if it matters.
It's all right, Nick. I mean, I'd say I don't think, is it critical to you?
No, I'm fine.
I can tell you, we all look really good for what it's worth.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the regularly scheduled Planning and Zoning Commission meeting Tuesday, May 26, 2020. Call to order. Public hearing. The 3 items on the agenda are of record from the previous hearing, and I was told that we don't need to read that. I will read them when I get to items of the agenda, items for consideration. Citizens' comments and reports. Might be a little repetitive, Rick, but let me go ahead and do it. For this meeting, the public will be permitted to offer public comment on any subject matter and or agenda item telephonically as provided by the agenda. To address planning and zoning, use the following toll-free toll-free dial-in number 346-248-7799 and enter meeting ID 814-2993-3625. And the password is 252318. Your comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and you must be ready when admitted by the moderator. In accordance with Open Meetings Act, commissioners may not discuss or take action on any item that has not been
Not missing
posted.
anybody that's calling in.
I heard somebody talking. Should I?
All right.
Okay,
Got-
well, you got me.
Yeah, guys, hang on. I want to just make absolutely sure that I'm not missing something if anybody has called in. So I want my IT person. So I'm going to stop sharing for just a
No,
minute. Hey,
we've got
oh,
a screen, so they would be
they'd be where?
on that screen. Okay. 7 people are waiting. Scroll down. Okay. Okay. All those people are waiting.
How do I know that for the phone or for the Zoom?
Well, I don't know. I haven't done this before. That's why. Anyway, there's a number, and I think that's just a number, but I'm not sure because they're calling in on the phone. Could be a name. See, those are the top ones are the names.
Okay. All right, Nick. We think we have this. All right. So I'm sorry. So we've got some callers waiting. Do you want to see if they want to speak now for the agenda item?
That would be fine.
Is that where we were?
Yes.
Okay. Let me start. We've got seven waiting. Let me start admitting them. Okay. Just bear with me. What we're a little unsure of, Nick, is if those in the waiting room are trying to join our Zoom meeting, or if this is if it shows up this way if they call in. So that's what we're gonna have to find out. Okay.
Last time it showed up that way for both the Zoom meeting and the people that were just calling in.
Okay. So,
Like that's just a phone call.
all right. So, 281-620-1145. Are you here to make a comment?
I apologize. Be appropriate to identify the phone number. Just my thinking out loud.
Right. Again, 281-620-1145. Your line is open. We're going to start the timer.
Thank you very much. My name is Jim Brissy. I'm counsel for the owner in connection with the replat of. Hello, I just received a this is Jim Brissy.
Go ahead. You're good.
Okay, I just received a message. I was muted, but yeah, I'm the counsel for the owner of the property that's subject to the replat. Item 4.1 on the agenda. It's a replat of the landing. As the commission may remember, it was pulled last time to address some of the concerns the commission members had, I believe, after meeting with Jim Urban, the engineer, and everyone involved. The issues have been addressed. Am I being heard right now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I was just not sure of that. So I haven't been able to hear anything up until the point I just joined because I had to relearn my old Google password very quickly. So I apologize for that. I understand that the concerns the commission had primarily to do with the construction of the utilities that would shed the water from the property. I understand from the city engineer that they're satisfied with that will actually be addressed not so much at this stage, but instead when the construction plans are submitted for constructing improvements that will be Shark Way. That is the water line, the storm sewer line, and everything else that goes with that.
That is correct, Jim. And like I said, and they got they've gotten the comments that from Urban regarding the plat. So I mean, I think everybody pretty much knows where you're coming from.
Okay.
Is that it?
Yes, I apologize. Unfortunately, I don't know what transpired before I chimed in. So hopefully that addresses the concern. If there is a concern that the commission has to address for the owner, you know, I'm certainly willing to do it.
All right.
Hey, Rick, was he intending on speaking during his topic? Does he know this is a public comments?
Right, Jim. Yeah. So we're in public comments. If you want, you can watch the live stream on the link I sent, and then or that's on the agenda. And like I said, call back in when you get to the item if necessary.
Okay. Yeah, I was unaware this was a comment period. I apologize. We are, however, the very first item set on the agenda for consideration, item 4.1.
Okay. Yeah. Just why don't you just, if you don't mind, just I'll mute you and you just hang tight. And that way, if there's any questions or anything that you'll be there and I can unmute you.
All right. Thank you. I'll do that.
All right. All right.
Rick, the 305 number is also the property owner associated with that agenda item.
The one I admitted.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So they should be hearing our audio right now. So again, is that Shlomo? Shlomo. So Shlomo, I see you there. When we get to that agenda item, we'll open that up if that's okay. So just hang tight. All right.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Did we say last time that we were going to limit all comments to the public comments and that we weren't going to take comments during the agenda items?
No, we did not. We discussed it, but we're kind of following the council's way of running the meeting.
Okay, I just thought I remember that.
So I think that
Well,
we
here's
need
the
interest of
problem,
time,
Vanessa.
so we're not here
Here's
for
the
4 hours
problem
again.
Yeah, the problem with that is on public comment, there's only a one-way exchange. They can just talk about anything and just make a statement. If it's during the agenda item, you guys could actually ask a question or have some dialogue. So that's the reason we didn't want to limit it to just the public comment, so that if they did have a question, you know, again,
Okay.
they could ask that back and forth. It was a little limiting, it appeared, if we only did it in the public comment. So that's why.
Okay.
All right, let me see who else we have. See if they want to speak now or during item. 855-1549, are you there?
Yes, it's just this is Devin Bokta and Alex Harris. We're just here for agenda item number 2. If there's any questions.
Okay. Very good. Nicole, will you just write who these numbers are?
I have them all down.
Thank you. Got Jim.
The 315 number is, I don't know.
Okay. All right. Phone number 315-566-9628. Did you want to speak on an agenda item or a public comment? Your volume is very low if you're speaking.
It sounds like maybe they have the live YouTube stream going.
That's me.
Is that Luke?
Yes.
Okay. If you could turn the YouTube volume down.
Okay, I can do that now. Just a
Okay.
second. Where'd it go? Yeah, that's why I'm getting it. Just a second. I've learned how to do that.
It sounds like maybe they have to.
Yeah. Okay, it's Luke. Yo.
Luke, 3 minutes, go.
Okay. I hope you've all seen the Progressive Insurance commercial in their Zoom meeting and know that we are not alone in struggling with this technology. I love the Darth Vader imitation. That was really something. And as Luke Skywalker, I like to bring up some few points. The landing. Lately, I've been riding my bike to Roberts Point Park on weekends. Last Sunday afternoon gives a perfect example of the reason to deny a permit for a new street coming into this extremely congested area. Our infrastructure simply cannot cope with it. Traffic was backed up for blocks in both directions with a stoplight at Cutoff Road on blinking red and a mechanized voice saying, "Not in service." No police directing traffic, just irate motorists honking, driving into the wrong lane to go around other people, pulling U-turns and cutting each other off. Rock Cottages, same stuff, different driveway. The same situation, another traffic cluster just waiting to happen. It's on the planning board for Rock Cottages townhouse proposal on Avenue G. This street would come in right across from 11th Street, further adding to the fun on any busy weekend. The developers won't be here to direct traffic or pay for a stoplight or assist in counteracting the chaos. In addition, besides removing an historic property, which I understand was damaged by the hurricane, this is another non-compatible development in the designated Old Town area. I did not see the rendering of the rear view of these townhomes in the packet materials that I printed out, but I have concerns that there may be an ordinance that sets a 20-foot building setback from any major street that might apply in this case. I know it has been applied on Station Street in the past. Finally, I'd like some clarification from whoever on preliminary and final plats. I don't understand why they both come in at once. I think it makes sense, and I'm hoping you can explain why it doesn't, that if you have a preliminary plat at one planning and zoning meeting first, with the public and other concerns and comments coming in, you could work things through, then at a later planning and zoning, come back to a later planning and zoning meeting, and after the final plat request is all worked out and submitted, then you start the 30-day limit on your reply.
10 seconds.
So those are my concerns. Pardon?
Oh, I'm just giving you a 10-second warning. Sorry.
Okay, so that's my concern, that we keep running into unintended consequences, and when the public tries to bring it up, we're reprimanded or blown off. And I think that we really need to look at our comprehensive plan. There are people that can go over it and say where there's glitches and make it clearer. We've done that before, hired a consultant that could go through it with us. And I'm hoping you will consider this again.
All right, Luke. Luke, we can answer your question regarding the platting process. There's no prohibition, and again, I've muted you. We'll let and I'll let the engineers chime in, but it's not the least bit unusual for somebody to bring the preliminary and final plats in at the same time. Certain requirements and information is required on a preliminary plat that, if complete, there's no prohibition against them bringing in the final plat at the same time. Doesn't mean it has to be approved. It doesn't mean it doesn't have the same examination process. But again, if everything is complete, like I said, it's just a statutory process that's allowed, and that we follow. We follow the same statutory state platting process. So it's not the least bit unusual. Now, if there were circumstances that the developer wanted to bring a preliminary plat in for review, maybe there was some items that were out of the ordinary, different for whatever reason, they could do that and have certain, probably certain vesting rights that would be afforded them when they brought the final plat in. But I don't know if one of the engineers in just a couple of seconds would want to just elaborate on that statement a little bit.
We have seen a preliminary plat come in without a final plat before. The Marisol subdivision was one that was like that.
Right. I mean, anything I didn't make clear, any of you engineers that do a lot of the platting?
Are we allowed to say anything? Isn't this just?
I'm not real sure if, I know the commissioners are not supposed to talk about anything at this moment.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're still public comments. Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah, you can answer with factual statements to answer a question. We just can't have a discussion.
So was that an accurate statement that it's not the least bit unusual to have preliminary and finals done at the same time? I mean, I think
it's a process that's set by state law.
So yeah, all right. I've got another caller. All right, caller 432-386-3945.
Yes, this is Kathy Fulton.
Kathy, do you want to talk now or wait for an agenda item?
I sent you a letter that addresses 2 of the agenda items mainly. I didn't even try to touch the 3rd one. I want to make sure that everybody there is aware, because I'm raising some very valid issues. And I am requesting on the agenda item that has to do with Laughing Rock, Laughing Horse, whatever the hell it's called, that agenda, that when I'm making a request that another outside engineer firm review this. I have a huge problem with the fact it received all those approvals at the last meeting and was voted yes. And then suddenly, after all that happened, you all discovered the deal with the setbacks. I think this is a big problem. It's been a problem and it needs to be addressed. And the only way to address it is to have another firm come in and look at it. I do not trust, not going to lie, I don't trust the building department in doing it. I don't trust Hanson, and I don't trust urban engineering, because it's clear that this has happened multiple times. Thank you.
All right. Well, Kathy, I certainly understand. I've heard that. My spin is that yes, there was some things missed, but they were caught. So to me, the examination process ultimately worked. Maybe not as accurately and as expeditiously, but it worked. And again, there's a lot of reviews, and I guess to say we could send it to 3 or 4 more engineers and it might or might not have been caught in the issues, but in the end it was caught, it's brought back. And like I said, so the process in my mind worked, at least in this instance. So I hear what you're saying. We like to catch everything, but there's a whole lot to look at. And sometimes when we're not there nudging one another, like I said, in a virtual meeting, I think that there's a more higher likelihood that something like that could happen. But in the end, it was caught, brought back, and here we are discussing it again. So I hear you.
Real quick, this comment is not directed at Kathy Fulton, but at you, Rick.
Mhm.
It was caught. I brought it up multiple times. I brought it up at the last time that a townhome was developed. Nobody listened to me. It was brought up. I want that on the record.
I hear you, and I gave you credit. What we missed was why we were wanting to do what we did. We got so focused on the setbacks that exist in ordinance. What didn't get discussed was the double frontage that would have still.
Hey, Rick,
so
hey,
you're
Rick,
right.
let's take this up at the agenda item.
Yeah. Okay. But I hear you, Vanessa. All right. I think that's all the calls that we had calling in. So, Nick, that's all I've got. Showing.
Okay. You had 7. I think you've done 5. Just did the 2 drop off? I'm just making sure.
No, they're with the next
waiting
agenda
on the
item.
agenda item. Okay.
Right.
Thank you. And just for clarity and for the respect of the Kathy and Luke that wrote a letter. I believe Rick sent those out today. I just want to confirm everybody received and has read them, commissioners.
Robert Tips, yes.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll move to items for consideration. First item for consideration, 4.1, discuss and take appropriate action on PPLT and FPLT 200683, The Landing, applicant 347 Cotter LLC. I apologize about the name. Somebody help me. SHLOMO.
Yeah.
LLC.
Shlomo.
Property location is 347 Cotter Avenue. I'm going to let Rick start. So, did anybody hear me?
Yep, we all heard you.
You see my screen, Nick, right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
again, this is the item that was discussed last time, and there was a little bit of concern and confusion with, I think, more the language that was used with respect to the drainage and the amending of the drainage plan. I think Urban's letter that I sent to you all this morning, I think kind of does a good job of explaining that maybe there was a better way to use it rather than amending the plan. What essentially is being requested just out of necessity is an alternative drainage plan. There's been a lot of back and forth, and I think that we finally hammered out after a phone conference after our last meeting with a lot of the parties, including representatives from Urban, who again is representing the city on the review. I think what you have now is a final document that everybody feels pretty comfortable with meeting all the requirements for both a preliminary and a final plat, with again the comments that I'll point back to that Urban made, which seem pretty minimal, and I'll let them address that. I think Skrabarchik's on the line. Like I said, really with that, just the refinement and the tweaking that was asked is the last meeting. I think now is at a point where everybody, most importantly, our reviewing engineers are in agreement, satisfies all the requirements. Certain others will be required once a specific development is identified and earmarked with respect to certain construction and civil items, but that's traditionally done at that stage and not at the platting stage. So with that, I'll let Will and anybody, I'm Stephen and Will make any comments if they need to.
Do we have the engineer of record on this that could possibly explain the difference in, none of us are perfect and we can stare at the old one, we're not engineers. Could someone try to explain to the commissioners what is different on this? Do we have the Munoz engineer rep or anybody?
I don't think we have anybody from Bristol that's on there. Jim is here. Jim, I've unmuted you, but Stephen, you want to just kind of talk about what you guys ultimately, the changes that are represented here? Stephen, you're unmuted, but I can't hear you. Can anybody else?
No.
Stephen, no audio.
How about now?
There you go. You're good.
Okay. So the changes were really just to get this thing more in line with the requirements for a preliminary plat as the code dictates. The only addition, well, I guess the addition to the preliminary plat document was all of the utilities that are required are shown on this document instead of a separate document. And the preliminary plat is a kind of a planning document that allows the city to ensure that all of the utility connections that are required in the construction plans is to ensure that the city or that the applicant has demonstrated that those required connections can be made. All of the detail comes in the construction plans. And the final plat can be submitted with it as long as the preliminary plat is approved. And everyone's received my comment letter from Friday?
I did.
Okay. Then I think that if anybody has any questions about any specifics of that comment letter, then I can address them as the questions arise.
But having read the letter, having been in on the initial call that Commissioner Smith sat in with us and with these discussions and reviewing what the final product was with some obviously requested changes, I can tell you that the staff is much more comfortable with this product, and we feel it meets all the requirements for preliminary and final plat. So we do recommend approval.
I thought that our issue with this was drainage, not utilities, but drainage to a drainage variance is what they wanted or needed.
Not a variance per se, but an acknowledgement that the only way in both, well, the designing engineer, but more importantly, our reviewing engineer felt they could meet the required drainage was to go outside of the master drainage plan per se. So essentially it's an alternative drainage plan out of necessity to facilitate.
So it is a variance by plat. I want to be clear about that because that's some of the public issue with this.
Let me address this by reading my comment.
I don't, the language is too vague. We need to say, yes, it's a variance by plat, or no, it's not a variance by plat.
It's not a variance. It's not a variance in the term of our variance definition. It's an alternative drainage plan that you are approving, but it's not a variance in the sense that it's a height difference, a setback issue. It's something we don't see very often. In fact, I don't know that we've seen an alternative drainage plan.
But it's something outside of our ordinances. So it is a variance.
Vanessa, yeah. The master drainage plan is adopted by ordinance. And so, like I said, this is an alternative to that. Does it meet all of our drainage requirements per ordinance? Yes. It just doesn't do it within the drainage basin that it was intended to because of its age and what happened around it. So, like
so then no, it is conforming to our ordinance and it's not a variance because it does conform.
Correct. It's just an alternative drain. It's an alternative.
That's all because a lot of people felt like it wasn't conforming and that it was a variance. And so I want to be clear that it does conform to our ordinance and that we have no reason to discuss the drainage.
Okay. Yes. And I think your answer, I think the answer is yes, but I'll refer back to our technical experts, which are our reviewing engineers that look out for the city in this respect. So Stephen, one of the two, any comments with Commissioner Brundrett's question?
I'm just going to read the comment that we made on the preliminary plat. The master plan is based on topographic features and not property boundaries or ownership. Redirecting drainage across boundaries is common, and it is in the city's interest that applicants request an alternative drainage plan that directs all runoff from Lot 3A to public facilities in lieu of allowing runoff to impact adjacent private properties. All drainage from Lot 3A is directed to Cotter Avenue via underground storm improvements in proposed Shark Way. This is acceptable to the city.
So initially, I definitely had an issue with the preliminary plat last time because there was so much unsurety, I guess, vagueness in what was going on with the drainage. And talking with Rick and hearing from Urban, and then also learning a little bit more about, I guess, what their plan is. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rick. A commercial development has to drain onto commercial property, which is why they are required to drain all of this onto Shark Way. They just didn't give anything else last time how they were going to do it, which is why we had such an issue. But technically now that they are claiming that they're going to drain it onto Shark Way, they've shown some storm drainage, whatnot, and then at the time that they submit a building permit, engineer will review to make sure that it's adequate. Is that correct?
That's a good assessment. Yeah, you can't, because of their desire to subdivide what was now property all under one ownership into 3 lots. Part of it left the idea that you were going to drain one lot across another. Well, it's fine when you're all one lot and you're the same ownership, but you can't do that when you're subdividing. So you had to be able to come up with a method to drain each lot independently to a public area without crossing over or onto another property. And so I think that was maybe the part that had been missed initially and was clarified with this. Each of these lots now, independent of one another, can drain to a public feature without impacting the adjacent lot.
Can you hear me, Rick?
It's shown to be able to do that. Like I said, a development comes in and they may have to show a different way, but the platting process only requires that they be able to demonstrate it can be done in one fashion. If that becomes the only fashion with the new development, then that's how it has to stay. But during the construction part, if an alternative can be decided at that point, that's fine. The platting, though, to grant a plat had to be shown that there was a feasible way to do it.
Frank?
Can you hear me?
Frank?
Yeah.
Yes.
Speak away.
Excuse me. There's a letter here from Munoz Engineering that says that they are requesting an amendment, and then they go on to say we request a waiver. To me, that's a variance.
Frank, you're correct, and that's what prompted a lot of what we went back to. That's an older letter now, superseded by this process. That was part of the problem, is that when they talked about waivers, and I think Commissioner Brundrett, Vanessa spoke to that, it made it sound like they were amending, waiving our plan. That wasn't really the case. They were looking for an alternative drain option. So that letter, I think, kind of started this discussion for semantics.
Well, it's still in the package.
Well, I left everything in the package. Somebody's request once before, they didn't want anything removed. So I left everything that's old along with everything that's new. And if at some point you guys don't want to do that, then that's fine too. We'll put the packages together however you'd like. But at least for this one, there was nothing taken out, only added to, and I tried to make it very clear in bold caps what was revised and what's new.
I think it is appropriate to I think, Frank, you and I both agreed on that when these things, just like this one, if I recall, the applicant pulled it so they could come back at this meeting in lieu of it being later on. I think it's nice as a refresher and a reference point to have everything in chronological order, I think, Frank.
I agree, but I also thought that I read, and I was looking for it here, I thought I'd read somewhere that nothing has changed in what was presented from last month. And I don't see why.
Oh, Frank, I made a comment that all the agenda items were all items that had previously been, I
know, I remember that, yes.
If that's, like I said, if that's what you're referring to, I'm not sure, but yeah, I don't recall seeing anything on all of the agenda, because every agenda item, because it's being brought back, had a change to it.
Any comments from the other commissioners or questions? We also, Rick, I believe we had a gentleman that may be on hold that you might invite back that was a part of representing the replat. Is that correct? During our
Rick, that's the 281 number and the 305 number.
Yeah, Jim, are you, I think Jim is there. Shlomo, are you there?
Jim or Troma?
Yes, I'm here.
That's the property owner. Shlomo, go ahead. Anything that you'd like to say as the property owner?
I wasn't listening to anything because I couldn't hear anything. I just now hearing everything.
Okay. Well, let me let Jim talk and just hang tight a second. Jim, you there?
Yes, this is Jim Brissy, and I'm counsel for 347 West Cotter. Mr. Malul is the principal, or one of the principals. The concerns the commission had before, I think, are partly addressed, not necessarily just by what we're doing here, but also by the actual statutes or the ordinances of the city. I sent Rick, and I know it was a kind of late notice, a copy of, I think it's 21.86, the city ordinances, where it says, in essence, okay, if you're going to replat, that's, but you also have to submit detailed construction plans that address specifically, it says in that ordinance, drainage. And that is what we've all kind of discovered, in myself as well, that this process works one way. We set up what appears to be a feasible way for draining the land, and the change on the plat, the replat, the preliminary plat, is partly to show those solid black arrows directing the water from the shaded area into Sharp Way. And then the issue will come later when the construction plans are prepared as to how that can actually work with existing drainage. That is, if it doesn't work, then the plans won't be approved and nothing will be built, at least not what was proposed. But there is protection for the city. There is protection in the process that's set up in its own ordinances. And again, it's going to get back to when the engineer comes up with the construction plans and the drainage, then they may have to do something to address the flow. There may need to be a detention pond or retention pond placed on the property to slow down the flow. There's a number of ways to resolve this concern that the commission has, but really it's at the construction phase when those plans are prepared when that particular concern is addressed.
Rick, I found the letter that I was talking about. It's a letter that you wrote to Jim Urban on May 19th, and it says, the first line says, enclosed, please find an e-copy of the above mentioned plats. Application was previously reviewed and hasn't changed. So if we didn't approve it last time, I don't know why we would approve it.
Frank, I'm sorry, it's probably my punctuation. So the application itself, the plat application didn't change. The e-docs themselves were changed documents. So that was intended to read that the application hadn't changed. So I don't know if I don't have the comma in the right place. I don't have it right handy, but that's the e-docs.
Well, it's not a comma. You have it in parentheses. I mean, in quotation, in parentheses.
Yes. So the plat application didn't change. The e-docs that I sent for review I sent them for review because they had changed, just for clarity's sake.
So the
that was set apart.
to the application
was previously reviewed, and the application hasn't changed.
Well,
but the addenda did.
Right.
Gotcha. And then I have a question about Stephen's letter, dated May 22nd. I just want to make sure I understand it correctly. It says that before the final plat can be recorded, that all the infrastructure for Sharkway, including those storm drains and underground sewers, have to be constructed and thereby dedicated through the final plat. Is that correct? Because it doesn't sound like there is a lot of room for change if that's true.
Vanessa, that relates to the Sharkway public improvements and the drainage features that become part of that public improvement. The street and those features have to be in.
Okay.
Because that's what the other lots will tie to, those public drain features.
Right, but that's what we're talking about, right? That all the drainage is going to go to Sharkway and then subsequently down to wherever, Cotter or?
Correct, and that's why it's very important, although not required for platting, that the engineers have done their due diligence in those public improvements that we're requiring to be installed that will accommodate any future development that will need to use those. So in other words, if they don't build the capacity into the public features that are required to be installed, then that could limit or hinder their.
But why aren't we requiring them to install the capacity at the time that they're doing the work?
They are installing capacity. But what I'm saying is if they decide to do something different that would require greater capacity, then that's on them. Okay. Like I said, if somebody were to say, hey, I got a big piece of property in the back and my plan is to put 2 single family houses on there, so be it. Your capacity is fine for that. If they decide later to put 25 cottages, well, then they either got to go back in and redo the public utility, the public capacity, but it's on them at that point. So, but I can tell you the capacity that they've designed in appears to be pretty adequate for, the development. And I'm confident that, that if not, then it's either going to limit, hinder, or require them to come back. Their burden is just so that they have a feasible plan. And so that's what they've presented. Like I said, the capacity issue is an expensive underestimation if that's what happens. Stephen, anything to add to that? Is that is that an accurate statement?
Okay, and so then those actual improvements through Sharkway actually make it conform to our current drainage plan.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it does conform.
It gives that method, and with what they've presented, gives that ability to fulfill their drainage obligation demonstration on a plat.
Okay.
Any other commissioners? I do feel like the applicant was respectful in our wanting them to do more homework in it. I do believe, based on what they've done and the comments from Urban, the reviewing engineer, I believe what we left him with, their assignment, I believe they fulfilled it from our last meeting.
I would agree. I think it didn't check all the boxes for what we require for preliminary plat, especially with drainage and whatnot, and they have done that now.
If there's no more comment, I'd invite a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary and final plat 20-0683 of the landing.
Do we have a second?
Nicole, do you want to call the roll, or do you want me to?
I'll second that.
Huh?
Who was the second?
I don't know, but somebody might have said something right when I did, but I'll second it.
Okay. All right, so I've got Vanessa Brundrett.
Yes.
Frank Morgan.
Oh,
Frank, I didn't hear you.
no, N-O.
Robert Tips.
Yes.
Garrett Kipke,
Yes.
Clark Smith,
Yes.
and Nick Lorette.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thanks, Nicole. I didn't anticipate, completely forgot about that part.
No problem. I just have a loud little baby here too, so I'm gonna stay on mute.
That's all right.
Okay, we're going to move to 4.2 items for consideration, discuss and take appropriate action on PPLT and FPLT 20062 Rock Cottages Townhomes. Applicant Laughing Rock LLC, property location 603 Avenue G. And Rick, would you go ahead and kind of start where we are now compared to where we were? And candidly, guys, I spoke to more than one commissioner, and we all collectively spoke to staff, and we weren't comfortable, and we did more homework collectively. And I yield to Rick right now.
Thanks, Nick. And I know that there's, and again, Commissioner Brundred, I'll absolutely, you get the credit for just not having a sense that there was something right with that proximity to Avenue G. And like I said, I went and listened, and we were, me and a lot of the other, we were focused on what the setbacks in the city are, that a piece that was missed, and it was an important piece. And it was the fact that with the internal driveway for the Laughing Rock proposal that fronted on the public street to allow the subdivision of those lots, which has to front on a street that either directly or indirectly connects to the public paved street, which makes it a street and creates the frontage for those lots that were being requested to be subdivided, created a double frontage issue. And that's the part that we never reached. I missed it. Everybody missed it until we didn't miss it, and we caught it. Like I said, we talked to the developer, we talked to the engineers, and just made it clear that we needed to fix it. We just couldn't support it going forward to council. Right, wrong is unfortunate as it was that we didn't catch it sooner. The fact that we caught it just necessitated action, and so everybody was agreeable. They went back to the drawing board. They redrew it, and essentially what you see now is one that has received even more examination. Does fix that setback issue off of Avenue G. 15 feet by virtue of the fact that the plat note remains, which prohibits access off of Avenue G. So the double frontage, and I don't want you to confuse double frontage with the way you enter a property necessarily as the ability to connect to two different arterials, which is the case in this double frontage reference. But when you do that, then you have the ability to maintain 20-foot setbacks on each frontage, on each arterial, and plat it that way, or give up forever via a plat note, give up access from one or the other and reduce it to 15 rather than the 20. So that's what they, like I said, they had always prohibited access, which we would have encouraged strongly anyway to get the traffic entering and exiting internally rather than on. So that's what you see now is that revision that does give the 15-foot setback off of G. That's really the change that you see here.
Any comment from the commissioners?
I have several. So the second street that you're referring to is the private road? What are we referring to?
The way the lot's configured, and so when you're proposing a subdivision and subdivision of lots, for that lot to be able to be platted, it has to front on a public street, or a drive on the public street. So if it's a one lot condominium that had multiple cottages and internal circulation, it wouldn't apply. But in this case, where you're subdividing lots and you have fee simple lot, then that becomes a street.
They're not, Rick, I got to stop you. They're not lots. They are building sites, and your only access is Avenue G. A private street is a common element. It's not a right of way. And it doesn't give access. So your access still comes from G. We would take exception to ingress and egress for a private road.
I mean, I've got the engineer and the developer. This is a disagreement we have.
I know what you have, Rick. I got 20 years experience. I'm telling you, it's not access.
Vanessa, I've got 40 years in construction, lending, and banking. So I've got a little bit, but that aside,
I totally disagree. Your frontage is G, they're building sites, they're not lots. And I cannot be more clear about that.
I don't know how to respond, Vanessa.
I know.
I can tell you what I know.
You've got, if you don't have access from G, you
one
don't
at a time,
have
please,
access.
guys. One at a time.
If
Vanessa,
you don't have access from G, you do not have access.
This is Stephen Grunwald with Urban Engineering. We are dedicating access and utility easement. It's the private drive, street, road, whatever you want to call it. It will circle through the development. So that is.
So the public will have access to that?
It's a private street to the people within the development, but it is for everyone's access. It's a private street.
It's a common element for the owners. Correct?
I could drive through it if I wanted to.
I mean, it's not going to be gated, so I guess theoretically anybody could drive through.
Right.
Just like they can drive through an apartment complex that's not gated.
The city has no obligation.
It's not gated.
But it's not right of way.
We are not dedicating a right-of-way lot.
Right.
But we are dedicating access.
I'm just trying to be clear. I understand that I'm going to be outvoted, that nobody's going to listen to me because nobody ever listens to me. But I'm just trying to be clear for the record what we're actually talking about.
And Vanessa, when that's recorded at your title company or another, that property owner will own that land, that lot, in fee simple title. The bank will finance it as an individual.
I understand fee simple. I understand what you're saying, Rick. I just don't agree with you. It's not a lot. It's a building site, and the setbacks are the actual lot.
We have a lot of that development in town. This isn't one of them.
I'm pretty confident.
The only way it conforms is if it has a 20-foot setback from G. That's the only way it conforms, and in the rear. It doesn't have double frontage.
Well, that's what I had brought up what we had all brought up and talked about at the last meeting too, was the 20-foot off Avenue G. And I can see on the plat that I'm looking at now that the houses that Mr. Lorette put across the road there do have a 20-foot building line on the Avenue G side.
I think I don't know whether that's correct or not. That is what the plat and preliminary plat show. We did that it was 20 or 15 or 10.
I think it's 10 on the ones across the street, and that was a variance.
Well, I mean, we're not asking for a variance on this 15-foot setback to Avenue G. We've got a 20-foot setback on the private street that we're dedicating as access, and from my understanding, that meets the ordinance without a variance.
I think private street and dedication don't go together, because dedicated means it's dedicated to the city, correct? And it's a right of way.
There's lots of private streets and all sorts of developments.
Wait, all of Cinnamon Shore is private streets.
Right.
Yes.
All of Palmia, I believe.
And they're common elements, and they're owned by the members of the HOA.
But that's their frontage.
And
that's
maintained by them.
Frontage.
Yes,
right. But we would you would never consider that street access to anything. You wouldn't consider that ingress and egress for something else.
Who is the 305 number?
That should be Loma.
Okay. I thought we had Alex on the line.
That's the 855 number.
Alex, are you on the line still?
Yes, we're on the line.
Would you like to chime in on the on the issue? Have you been here? Have you been listening?
Well, we get cut out a lot on it, the conversations. Again, this is the setbacks are along that private drive. Even though it's a private drive, it's just the way that it's labeled. The public uses it just like in every townhome development that I've had. You drive through, it meets the city setbacks on the 20-foot setbacks with it. They just call it a private drive. The side yards, which this is a double loaded, so the side yard on this one had to go from 10 to 15 feet, or the rear yard, because of the street, the way that the streets are along the front. That's where your garages are, or your carports. That's where we pull in. That's the front of the units where the street is, and that's where the setbacks come from.
And that's consistent with the way we've applied our setback ordinance in every subdivision. It's the configuration of the lot. Like I said, in this instance, it meets the double frontage definition, and hence had to have either 20-foot setbacks on both sides, or by virtue of giving up access from one, in this case, G, allows that to be reduced to 15 feet.
That's correct. We're giving up the access off of the Avenue G.
I think the basic disagreement is that these are not lots, they're building sites. That
Alex,
the lot itself is the big lot.
Right. Alex, you have some experience as well. How would you respond to that?
Yes, he does.
Vanessa, yes, both of us do from the title side. You're looking at it from the title side and not from the development side. And it depends on where I build them, and I build them both in Nueces and in Aransas and in San Patricio County. Each one of them look at it differently. Some call them a lot. Some of them call them a unit number. If you look at the elements, it's the same thing. You have a private drive with a 20-foot setback where you pull in off the street. Whether we call it a unit or a lot, it's still fee simple. It's just how the title company looks at it differently, and I think that's how you're mixed up with it. It's got the front setbacks. It fronts on a street. It's got 20-foot setback from your building line. All those items match up with it. It's just whether we call it A or we call it B, it's the same thing.
Very diplomatic.
Well, in Nueces County, from what I've seen, we call them building sites.
In Corpus Christi, we call them
and that
lots.
They're situated on
individual lots. And I have individual addresses on them in Corpus Christi also, and in Port Aransas, we have unit numbers. In Port Aransas, but in Corpus, they are actually lot and block, filed of record with a 911 address with them.
I think we're just gonna have to agree to disagree on this one, and we'll just move on because we don't have time.
Any other commissioners?
Well, I have one other issue. It's not directly related to that, but Hanson Engineering submitted a letter saying that the plat adheres to the city of Port Aransas code and ordinance. Unfortunately, the two letters they submitted were for last month. We haven't had anything now that there's been a revision. Things have changed, don't they? Aren't they supposed to send a letter saying it's approved? Anybody there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking to see if we don't have.
I got it right here in front of me.
Right. Yeah, I mean.
They actually did not catch the building setback issue themselves, and that was the only thing that changed.
Yeah, but they still need to review it, don't they?
Well,
April
Frank,
24th.
in this instance, they were included on the copy where we all acknowledged that we missed it. Like I said, they approved it the first time. Craig was aware, and I can tell you from a staff perspective, in this instance, with that being the only revision, getting more of a setback, it really doesn't have any bearing. I mean, we don't actually send everything necessarily.
Legally, aren't you supposed to do that? I mean,
Sorry?
Legally, shouldn't you do that? It's not in our packet.
No, practically we do. I mean, from a practical standpoint, we do that. We don't have any built-in requirement. It's an extreme safety mechanism because most platting is too technical for us to want to be, us being staff, to be responsible for things like we just saw with the landing and the utility. So we send that off to you. But that's
well, since there is some discussion by the commissioners about whether or not it does conform, shouldn't there be a review by an outside engineer?
Well, there was, and he approved it with.
Or the submitting engineer just gets to decide that it's correct?
He approved the previous one. This is not, the letter in here is for the previous one.
Yeah, he approved it with a lesser setback.
Right, but you're making some assertions that it's based on some other basis. So that hasn't been reviewed.
I don't understand what the assertion is. Oh,
yes.
The
assertion is that this is appropriate because you have double frontage. Shouldn't that be reviewed?
It was reviewed. I mean, that we're telling you what.
No, I mean, there's no response. There's no letter that it was reviewed.
No,
it was reviewed by who?
Last month it was reviewed. It was not reviewed for this.
But no, it was not reviewed for this month because the double frontage was not presented last month.
Right. That was made aware to the reviewing engineer. He had no comment, and we did not send it for a specific reason. We just.
So those of us commissioners that would like to see their comments don't get that.
If that's your pleasure, that's fine. I'm telling you, staff didn't feel it was necessary. We put them on notice. We let them know what everyone missed, including me. I was the first one that has absolute culpability, along with the engineer, told him the mistake and made him aware of it. He didn't respond, nor would I have expected him to. We went back and asked for a revision to 15 feet to meet the ordinance. Staff feels that was the error. We feel that it meets now with that revision, it meets our ordinance. And so I've been on the fact that we say it meets our ordinance and the platting requirements, and again, continue to recommend it meets approval.
With all due respect, Rick, staff feels it, but the engineer hasn't said a word about it.
We acknowledged that the ordinance required the 15-foot setback with the note prohibiting access to Avenue G. So we made it a 15-foot rear setback instead.
You're the engineer for the client. I'm talking about.
That didn't come. Yeah, that didn't.
You're not the engineer that reviewed it for the city.
I serve at your pleasure. If you feel that's something that you need to go back to an engineer and have him confirm, then that's fine. I
just think legally it's
strongly.
I certainly would like to rest my hat on that because I don't agree.
You don't agree with what? He approved it with
the finding. I don't agree with that there's a double frontage. And I want the outside engineer to confirm that is true. And I don't recall in 3 years ever seeing one that wasn't reviewed.
Well, we don't have a requirement that we send everything for review.
Well, I'm just saying in 3 years, I don't recall ever seeing one that wasn't reviewed by an outside engineer.
We don't always send something for re-review when the changes are minor enough to just meet the ordinance.
Oh, so, but the changes, the premise is vastly different.
I'm going to chime in, and it's not an opinion, but everybody was wrestling with the 10-foot off of G. And I'm not selling it at all, but I at least understand where staff is coming from, that it's now 5 feet farther back from Avenue G. If the commission feels like we need to submit that to Hanson, then that's what, if we collectively feel that way or majority feels that way, that's what needs to be done. It's a little bit of a surprise. It's I'm confident Hanson would be more than happy to approve it based on the information. You know, we don't have many, I don't know of many new public right-of-ways in the last 16 years of me being in the business. I mean, truly, without even thinking about it, 90%, way more than 90% of any new development is private streets, but public access. And those are just facts. I'm not debating the requirement. I guess it would be a night. Is it required, staff, should Hanson have received this, requested approval?
So they did receive all of the revisions. They just didn't make any additional comments on them.
Not sure that's an answer.
There's no requirement. That's left. We're left with some discretion, and this just wasn't one with the reviewing engineer being completely aware and in the loop of all the discussions, acknowledging that me along with the other engineers missed the double frontage piece, didn't make a comment. We didn't feel it was necessary. We got additional setback. So
I understand that, Rick.
I can't unscramble that egg. That's what happened.
And
we're aware, didn't comment.
It commonly happens with minor plats all the time, where something goes for review, there's revisions that need to be made. When those revisions are made, it's brought back to staff, and staff finds it adequate, the revisions that were made, and it's not sent for re-review.
There are also times when, you know, we're preparing construction plans and moving forward with construction, that AEP will ask for another, we'll increase the setback to accommodate something else. And normally, if you're adding easements or increasing a setback, it's not something that has to go back for review.
I mean, I'm not arguing the point that it's better. It actually not having access from G into those townhomes is desirable.
Yes.
I would simply.
I'm not arguing that point. I'm just trying to figure out what we're supposed to rely on.
If there's anybody that doesn't at this point now understand the reason that it came back, which was the double frontage issue, and challenges or doesn't believe that, once another engineer didn't catch it in the first place, nor any of us, and if there's something to be gained by going back or not, we operate at your pleasure. If you think that that's going to change anything, and we're doing it for a valid reason, is the only thing I would present to you. If we're doing it just to delay, I don't think that's fair or appropriate. If you think there's something to be gained, I will do whatever your pleasure is. We feel that it was all fleshed out. Conversations were had. We missed it. We acknowledged we missed it. We asked them to go back and fix it. That's what they did, and you have it there. So I can keep beating the horse, but he's not going to move anymore.
Any other commissioners want to make a comment or have a thought or a question? Well, I'm not the articulate one, and y'all all know this, but I do believe that if we don't recommend approval on this, I'm confident based on what's been said about and the examples before this on a double street lot, whether it's public or private, I think we can, there are examples of it. And I'm confident that if we don't recommend approval and the applicant actually does nothing but request Hanson to review it, I'm very confident he's going to have a letter dated appropriately and he will approve it. That's not, I don't speak for Hanson, but I mean, that's what I believe will happen either way. We can recommend approval, and if it passes, it moves on. We can not recommend approval, and I'm confident we'll see this next month, and we'll at least have that letter from Hanson that it's approved based on everything we've talked about today.
If you want an abundance of caution and you so choose to approve it subject to that letter being received, there's another check and balance in the process, which is City Council. I think that's another possibility. That should satisfy any concerns. If it's not forthcoming, then it doesn't move forward. So that's another option it just occurs to me. You could approve it conditioned on confirmation of everything that we've been saying.
I'm running out of alternatives other than to invite a motion.
On my agenda.
Just a minute.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we approve MRPLT 20-0762, subject to an approval letter from Hanson going forward to the council.
Very fair, I think.
Second.
Was that second Clark?
Robert Tips.
Okay, sorry. Okay. Garrett Kipke,
Yes.
Robert Tips,
Yes.
Frank Morgan,
I have to say no, based on the fact that I would like to see everything, all the T's crossed and the I's dotted.
okay. Clark Smith,
Yes.
Vanessa Brundrett,
Yes.
and Nick Lorette.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, bear with me. Frank, like last week or last month, I'm participating in a couple of different ways on this development, so I'm going to yield to you and I'm going to step out of the picture.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do I need to read all this, Rick?
Yes.
Okay. Discuss and take action to confirm that dune permit BFDP 20-0976 is consistent with the city's coastal management plan. The proposed permit will allow construction of multiple single-family residences with typical residential amenities, i.e. decks, driveways, utilities, irrigation lines, associated landscaping, etc., and a dune walkover. Applicant Bill Ott, BBD, property location 5495 Highway 361.
Thank you.
Open for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is brought back because of a discrepancy with respect, at the time, mainly the placement of the boardwalk. And so that was the real issue that kind of prompted this to be pulled, redone with different placement of the boardwalk. I think all the other fundamentals issues in development and plans remain the same. So I'll probably just let the engineer, the project engineer, maybe kind of speak to a couple of other, you know, a couple of other things that we've talked about on this particular one that have come up in various questions with respect to placement of some of the construction, that in relation to dunes, et cetera. So is that you, Stephen Skobarczyk?
Yes, and I'm scrolling through the document on the other screen up here. So the dune walkover has been moved based on some updated information that we received prior to the previous planning and zoning meeting. This dune walkover has been designed similar to several that y'all have seen recently, in that we figured out a way to not have to physically move dune areas in order to construct it. The construction will cause temporary impacts where the dune walkover is placed, but those impacts will be mitigated per the requirements in the dune permit. And we expect that the profile of the dunes will be returned to its state, to a state that matches the pre-construction conditions, and that the entire area under the dune walkover will revegetate, except for a small portion at the beginning and ending, just similar to every other walkover that's been constructed. I guess the previous layout showed the dune walkover going on top of the walkover that the condo owns. That is a separate entity from the entity that is developing the subdivision and the proposed walkover. I've added an area on one of the plan views. Let me get to it real quick here. I've added an area which indicates the no dune areas that are associated with the subdivision development more clearly than the previous application, previous dune permit. And I think that the walkover and the clarification of the no dune areas in relation to the subdivision should clear up many of the issues that were discussed at the last meeting. I guess finally, the permit has been reviewed by Hanson and has a letter of no exception from Hanson.
Stephen, there were some questions and comments about the construction that's both forward and seaward of the dune protection line. Is there anything that, as far as the amount of impact to the dunes that you wanted to speak to?
Not in association with the subdivision. That's all no dune area. So
well, that's kind of what I was. I just want to make sure that I was seeing the same thing, and I wanted you to say that. But is that the impact for the dunes on those construction areas?
There will be no impact because there are no dunes.
Right, and I think I'm glad you addressed that, Rick. You know, I in one of the letters is written from the public comment section, they had basically implied that these were critical dune sites inside the 1,000-foot range. And so I want to make sure that everybody understands that the reason we kicked it last month, I believe, was because the boardwalk was not constructed on the applicant's property. It was actually on the neighbors. And so I don't think the lots were ever the question on this one. It was the location of the boardwalk. because the lots are constructed in a no dune and impacted environment. Is that correct?
Yeah, thanks, Robert. I mean, I wanted to make sure that you guys had picked up on that. And so I kind of, thanks for picking up the softball. That's kind of where I was going with that.
Well, but it was also not very clear last time that it was the lots. We were approving the dune walkover. That's what it seemed like, as opposed to they're like, what, 27 lots inside the 1,000-foot line?
But there's no impact to critical dunes on those lots. So why would they, I mean, it's not applicable to a dune permit if there's no impact.
So there's temporary disruption because of the mitigation that's required. And what does temporary mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, somebody in a public comment said there's no such thing as temporary. Well, again, if you go in there and you disturb dunes or vegetation during the course of construction, I can tell you there's a great example down south on the dunes where they placed hydromulch netting over the dunes to enhance the revegetation restoration. I would challenge that statement as it was said that there's, yes, there are such things as temporary. They go in there, they disturb it, but they take the measures. We follow up that they restore it back to free disturbance conditions. So it's unrealistic to think you can build a boardwalk and not disturb something. But I having seen it time and time again, I don't think it's unreasonable to say, yeah, but you can go back there, reseed, protect, cover, hydromulch, whatever the technique you choose to use, and restore it to how it was before you ever impacted. So I think that just, in all fairness, needs to be stated when when somebody's talking about that. Because
well, Rick, I have less problem with the dune walkover than I do with the
screen totally wigged out and it just went away.
Construction of the 27 or however many it is structures within the 1,000-foot line. That's what my question was.
Right, but just as you'll see the Grand Caribbean itself, the very building itself is forward, and the house immediately to the south with the little compound in the area.
I know, I realize that.
Yeah, these are in an area right now that there are no critical dunes. The dune permit is by virtue of the fact that that's just been the process we require for a walkover. So even though the walkover only has temporary impacts, we've always required a full dune permit, even like this one when it goes up and over. But the residential component of this, like I said, is already in an area that's flattened. The dune, it quite frankly, doesn't have any dunes. So like I said, I just wanted to make sure that was pointed out, because we never really, you're right, we never got to the discussion about the residential lots, that part, because if I remember correctly, we kind of just yanked it pretty quickly when we realized the problem with the boardwalk.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Any other commissioners? If not, do I hear a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve dune permit BFDP 20-0976.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I don't know who that was, but we hit.
That was Garrett.
Oh, okay. Okay, all in favor? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Call the roll.
Call the roll. I'm used to being the chair of another board.
No worries. Vanessa Brundrett,
Audio, Vanessa.
Yes, sorry.
that's okay. Clark Smith,
Yes.
I am marking Nick Lorette down as an abstention. Frank Morgan,
Yes.
Robert Tips,
Yes.
and Garrett Kipke.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Nick.
Frank, you want to take the rest of it? It's pretty easy.
No, sir, it's yours, but I just want to say one thing to you. I do want you to call me later.
what do you want me to call you?
Mr. Morgan.
I'll call you in a little bit, sir. Okay, item 5, planning and zoning comments and items for future consideration. Rick?
Getting past the coronavirus. No, I just want to thank everybody. This has not been a great way, nor is it anything that we're used to. And I miss the ability to actually look at each other once face to face. But unless you guys feel strongly and want to continue this way, this will be our last virtual meeting. So thank you for bearing with us. And like I said, it's been as difficult for us as it is for some of you guys. But thank you for all you do and the passionate dialogue on both sides of everything.
I do have one item for future consideration.
Shoot.
About 2 years ago, we had a discussion, and I don't think an ordinance was ever passed, but we had a discussion about an ordinance for any construction over half an acre required United States Corps of Engineers approval that there was, or designation that there were no wetlands involved in wherever the construction was. I don't know whatever happened with that, but the Grand Caribbean and the Rock Cottages both, or Laughing Rock, whatever they call it, both are over half an acre. And I wonder.
Right, Frank, I can tell you real quickly that ordinance did pass, but the ordinance simply required is that since we have no authority over wetlands, the ordinance requires that on any developments a half acre or greater, we send notice for that development is pending, and just puts them on notice that there is likely to be development.
Puts them being the Corps of Engineers?
The Corps of Engineers, yes, sir.
And so they're not supposed to say there are no wetlands and then you can move forward?
No, sir, because it's what we realized is that we have no authority one way or the other. We don't have any authority to penalize. We certainly don't have the ability to determine. That's all a federal Army Corps process under their authority. But what we did feel is that what we didn't have before was at least putting them on notice that, hey, you got some guys that are going to be working in areas. Well, we didn't even care if it was a half acre. It didn't have to be environmentally sensitive areas or anything else. If you've got a half acre, then we're going to notify the Corps, and the penalties are stiff. So it's incumbent upon the developer to do that. But that ordinance did pass, is approved, and is in place.
So for future purposes, if we get around to amending our CZM, can that be included in that and then have a little more teeth to it?
I mean, I think it's an item for future consideration and discussion. We can't do it now, but
I understand that. But I mean,
yeah,
I think it's something we ought to look at.
Okay.
And by the way, I re-upped, guys. So you got to put it up.
You threw up?
I re-upped. So you
re-upped. I thought you said you threw up.
You applied
Get the
again.
privilege if we're all appointed.
If we are.
Yeah.
I may be the one thrown out.
Guys, enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing y'all in the diocese next time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good night,
guys.
guys.
Adjourning this meeting.
Thank you.
I got a roast. I gotta go.
Ah, sharing.
I'm trying to leave.